What's digital? What's digital? I know I'm supposed to know the answer to that question. Literally, digital is like ones and zeros. It's anywhere you're using computing, and I'm assuming for most museums, even the smallest ones, you're using computers all over the place. Sometimes we use digital to talk about digital communications, websites, social media, YouTube, etc., and sometimes we use it to talk about systems. So digital is not super well defined. What's digital transformation? Is it your ERP system, your CRM system? We've seen these interactive, immersive experiences, AR, VR. Is it that stuff? Is it, we've had something on blockchain and NFTs. Is it that, or is that not cool anymore after that kid with the curly hair went to jail? What's a digital strategy? Is it the order in which you end up doing those things? Again, sometimes a digital strategy is actually a digital communication strategy. It's about websites and apps and things. Sometimes it expands into exhibitions and galleries and audio guides, etc. But the scope of your digital strategy is often open to debate. So I think every museum probably approaches these things in a different way. According to McKenzie, something like 72% of digital transformations fail. It's a bit worrying if your job title has digital transformation in it, like mine. In the business media, the reasons most often given for this are things like change management, communications, and a sort of lack of digital skills. I think the communication thing, I think, is really relevant, really important. I think there's a George Bernard Shaw quote, which is, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it happened. But the other ones, this is interesting, right? You hear this a lot. People hate change. Oh, the biggest problem with this big project we're doing, the new finance system we're implementing, is that people hate change. But do people really hate change? I actually think that people don't hate change, in truth. People hate change where they have no agency. Which they hate change that is forced upon them. We all hate that, right? So I think that's not really what's going on. The problem isn't that people just naturally hate change. And the other one I hear is digital skills. We've got a digital skills problem. Margaret in the archive, she's worked for us for 102 years, and she's addicted to her, she's 124. She's addicted to her paper-based system. So my mum is in her late 70s, and I got her a smartphone like 5 years ago, and it was switched off most of the time, thus defeating the point of a phone, might I add, right? And so I could never get hold of her. And then all of a sudden, she loves going to the gym and doing classes at the gym. And the gym said, you can only book a class with the app. And before I know it, she's downloaded the app and is using the app. She's never downloaded an app before. She was highly motivated by this thing, right? And she wouldn't use WhatsApp until Sheila was on WhatsApp, and then she learned how to do WhatsApp. Before I know it, she's got WhatsApp, and I've been asking her to do it for like 3 years, right? So what happened there? What happened there was she was motivated to make that change. It was nothing to do with digital or not digital. It's about motivation. So I don't think we necessarily have a digital skills problem, but we might have a motivation problem when we're trying to manage change. So I don't think any of this is right. I don't think we've quite defined digital in the right way. I don't think we're defining digital transformation quite in the right way. It's unclear what the scope of most digital strategies are. And even when they go wrong, I'm not sure if we're even blaming the right things. So why isn't this thing working? I think we're quite inward-facing. And in fact, cultural institutions have always been institutions that push stuff out. We tend to consider ourselves to be the authority on subjects, and we decide, this is what the world needs to know, and we produce something to tell the world about the thing we want them to know. We rarely ask them. We're actually very creative in this sector. We're really creative, and we've done some very cool things. We see cool things here and cool things at our museum as well. Very creative. Often, again, though, it's creativity without necessarily direction. It's a specific thing that we decided to do, possibly due to grant funding, is we get the money to do a thing, so we decide to do the thing that we got the money for. And so we make decisions at the behest of grant funding, really. And as I just alluded to, I think we're just not customer-focused enough often in the decisions that we make. We're also really technology-driven. So we heard about kind of NFTs and things earlier, and then there was this big moment where a big-ish moment where lots of museums decided to take advantage of the fact that they might be able to sell a JPEG of a thing for £1 million. Great, but again, it's not a very considered approach to technology. We see technology, we see it being used, we think, how can we apply it to our museum? And I don't think that's the right way to do it. Okay, we are overall not very strategic. Right, so don't worry, we've got AI, right? You can have AI write your digital strategy. AI can probably do half of it. That's fine, right? AI has arrived and it's solved everything. Yeah? Yep. Okay, let's have a little check-in, see if it's solved everything.
Hey Google, what is love?
Do you want to know what love is?
Yes.
Playing Wanna Know What Love Is by Foreigner.
No foreigner, please.
You don't like foreigners. Here is an article by Nigel Farage.
No Google, I like Europe.
Playing the final countdown by Europe. I've detected that you like hair rock. Adding all the hair rock to your playlist.
No Google, no hair rock. Google, stop the final countdown.
You haven't set a timer.
No Google, I mean they're a terrible band. I hate Europe.
You hate Europe. I found the following article by Nigel Farage.
All right, so it hasn't fixed everything yet. Okay, fair enough. Okay, but there are some cool things. This is Sora, this is the AI video generation tool. All of this is generative video. This is something that Microsoft created. This is really interesting, right? You take a photo, okay, and you put some audio in the system, and it will animate the photo, right?
Have you ever had, maybe you're in that place right now.
So that audio, this is generated just from one single image.
You know somewhere deep in your soul, there could be some...
You see, like, occasionally there's like a weird bit with her mouth, and you can just about detect it. It's actually pretty good. Not bad. Well done, Microsoft. Microsoft, how have you applied this to the cultural sector? How are you going to use this to revolutionize what we do?
I work too hard, never ever relax like Rosa Parks. I don't ever sit back, bro. Keep two sticks in a ride like Twix, and he fling them packs when he see a Kit Kat. If you didn't want to angle, you shouldn't have run. Poor aunties lost innocent sons, and I know I miss bro, but he had to get bun, and I think it's more Pete that he gave me the
Thanks, Microsoft. All right, so it's interesting, right? But it's not less necessary. A lot of this stuff is not necessarily ready for prime time. Maybe that one is. So when we started talking about, ChatGPT and large language models and AI, everyone was blown away when sort of ChatGPT was released, and people started to work out what it was and stuff. And literally like 2 weeks later, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, it doesn't really understand what I want." So that's the bar you want. 2 weeks later, that's the bar you've set for it to truly understand you as a person. There is this weird thing where it's completely revolutionary, and then immediately we want it to do so much more. It's worth looking at this, stepping back a little bit, doing some rising scanning. Right, so we are in this unprecedented technological age. This is the estimated economic impact of general purpose technologies. They interviewed, I think, 200 economic historians. I didn't know an economic historian was a thing, but apparently it is. And they mapped this, tells us, these waves tell us what the economic impact that these technologies had. It's relative, okay? But steam engines, railroad, electricity, all pretty important, right? And we get up here and there's, we've got computing, we've got e-commerce, etc., like Web 2, and here is where we are today. One of these things is it's not just AI that's driving this. We've got 3D printing, reusable rockets, adaptive robots, advanced batteries, autonomous mobility, cloud computing, AI, intelligent devices, multi-omic technology, I do not know what that is, precision therapies, programmable biology, digital wallets, smart contracts, and cryptocurrencies, all happening at the same time. Okay, they are feeding off of each other. We are at this really important time of our history. Lord Krishna, he goes to meet a king dressed as a sage, so in disguise, and the king loves chess. He fancies himself a bit at chess, and he's basically said to everyone, well, if you come and beat me at chess, I'll give you anything your heart desires. So they play the game. Krishna beats him, and he says, what can I give you? And he says, I want you to put a grain of rice on the first square of this chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the next, and keep on doubling it and doubling it and doubling it until you reach the final square of the chessboard. And he says, fine. And so he says, bring me a grain of rice, and he starts doing it, and very quickly he runs out, and so they bring more rice in. And it turns out that actually, by the time you get to the end, there are something like 18 quintillion grains of rice. It's like 2.9 billion tons of rice, more rice than there is in the world today, right? That is actually quite often used to describe what we call compounding, right? And often it's used in terms of compound growth, in terms of finance. But compounding is also what we're seeing in technology. And so we see this, and we see our current kind of digital strategies and our current planning as museums along this linear line. But consumers are on this one. Okay, and when you get the gap, right, that is disruption. It happens all the time. It's happened to lots of companies, and lots of them are famous for it. This is Kodak. Kodak invented the digital camera. That's not the digital camera, that's a Kodak box brownie. But they invented the digital camera. And in 2010, I believe, they were the leading seller of digital cameras globally. They were at #1 position. But having invented the digital camera, they realized that actually most of their money was in film, and they needed to keep selling old style cameras, 35mm cameras, in order to keep selling film, which is where the money was. So they didn't invest too much in the digital division. The problem is, Panasonic, Sony, Nikon, Canon, they didn't sell film. They didn't need to sell film, so they went all in on digital. By 2015, 5 years later, they were number 10 in digital camera sales, and it was basically all over. And then we have Blockbuster. Right, so Blockbuster. In 2001, a lot of people won't realize this, when Netflix was still sending DVDs out in the post, Blockbuster were planning to do streaming media across broadband. Hardly anyone had broadband. They had a plan to help people roll out broadband and do streaming video. They got there pretty much first. And they partnered with what they considered to be the best possible partner at the time. It was an excellent decision. The company they partnered with were called Enron. Enron, yeah. Turns out Enron had some dubious practices, particularly around accountancy, and saying that they'd achieved things that hadn't, and booking profits that they hadn't really made. Here is literally, this is a PowerPoint slide from 2001, from the Enron presentation. But it's all about building out this broadband network with Enron to do streaming in 2001. Okay, that have got there probably before Netflix. Netflix offered themselves up to Blockbuster, £50 million. Blockbuster said, no, don't need you, we're doing this. Found out there are some problems with Enron. That deal fell through, and they thought, well, we'll just pop it on the back burner. And then Blockbuster started DVD in the post-rental business and pursued things like gaming, and said, we'll do this, but maybe a bit later on. The problem is that disruption curve hit a lot sooner than they thought. A lot of people got broadband a lot quicker than they thought, and Netflix were able to take advantage of that. By 2010, 2011, it was basically all over. One of the biggest problems Blockbuster had is they had 9,000 stores tied into very long-term leases, and it was very hard for them to move. They were not an adaptable organization. All right, how do we not be Blockbuster? Right, so we talk a lot about digital strategy. I think we should talk about strategy. This is courtesy of Simon Sinek, who wrote a book called Start With Why, and that's what we should do. This is nothing to do with digital or technology. It's about defining who we are as museums, okay? Are we storehouses of stuff, or do we do something else? And I'd like to think we do something else. We have a bigger mission, and we need to focus on that bit first. Okay, so if you started your museum, appreciate some museums are 100, 200, 300 years old or more. If you started a museum today, what would it look like? What would you do? I don't think you would do it in the same way. I think what we're trying to do here is not a digital strategy, it's an adaptability strategy. I think we need adaptable people, I think we need adaptable processes, and I think we need adaptable products. So let's start with that. Adaptable people. How do we get adaptable people? I think this is all about culture, not digital culture, okay? Just culture. What's an organizational culture? Often invisible, not really good or bad. Some change, some are more static, and there's no good culture, but there might be a right one. And that is true because these companies here have cultures that I'm not a fan of, okay? But frankly, they've been successful companies. So I can't say they're bad, they're just ones that I think are hideous and toxic. Okay. Failure is good. It became not cool to keep saying, talk about fast failure and failure being good, but I still think we should, so I'm going to double down on it. You're not immediately good at things. Your first words were not, alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. They were like mum or dad, right? When you read your first book, it wasn't Great Expectations, it was My Dog Spot, which is highly underrated. And when you learnt to walk, okay, you had encouraging parents watching you, seeing you fail, okay, and encouraging you to go again, unless it was my mum, which she was like, get up, you loser! Well, we talked about her earlier. She likes the gym. If you can't fail, you can't adapt. Simple as that. We never have all the answers. The right answers depend on your organization, your mission, your customers. Testing and learning and failing fast is how you improve. If you can't do that, then you can't do it at all. I am more interested in momentum than the actual numbers, okay? Are we going in the right direction? I don't worry about hitting the specific number. If you try something and it goes the other way, then you know that's the wrong thing to do. That's why failure is important. This is from a book by a lady called Kim Scott, who used to work for Google. It's called Radical Candor. The axes are challenge directly, right, and care personally. If you challenge directly and you care personally, then what you get is radical candor, and that means growth and profound change from your organization. But if you care personally, but you don't challenge directly, then that is ruinous empathy, and that results in ignorance and no change. And if you challenge directly and you don't care personally, that is obnoxious aggression. Sometimes I do myself wander into that area. And if you don't care and you don't challenge directly, that is manipulative insincerity, and it results in mistrust and no change. In all honesty, I think in museums we've got a lot of ruinous empathy. I see that a lot, and because it's very lovely. Everyone is very nice to each other, okay? And so I spend a lot of my time trying to move people over here. If you've got someone who's manipulative and insincere, you should probably try and get rid of them. But also know that no one lives in these places. You move between them, depending on your state of mind. And when I get really annoyed with people, I stop caring. And when I stop caring, I am obnoxious and aggressive. So we have to be really self-aware. But this challenging directly is really important, I think, especially for museums where everyone is very nice. This is from a book called Turn This Ship Around by a guy called David Marquet. There he is there. He created an autonomous leadership style on a nuclear submarine, something that the Navy was slightly concerned about. He says decisions should be made where the information is. So you devolve that decision making, share the vision with your people. They'll tell you how to get there. Let them try new things, okay, and let them fail. The crew of his ship, he let them do everything. All the decisions, apart from hitting the button to fire the nuclear missile. Quite rightly, I think he kept that one for himself. What does good look like? Shared beliefs, expectations, language, customs, habits, and attitudes. That's really hard and something an organization has to work on. Those things need to be clear and well understood by all employees, and they need to be tied to a mission. And if you don't have a really clear mission or vision as an organization, engage with your executive and your trustees about how you get one. An adaptable process is this. If you're in IT or technology, you'll acknowledge this is the DevOps figure of 8. It's how we develop software iteratively. It's very useful. If you're someone like me, you've been trying to get organizations to adopt this for like 2 decades, and it's been a real challenge. And I think the problem is that whilst these teams are iterative, the organizations they're working in are not. This is a design council double diamond. This is a really good way to apply human-centered design thinking processes in your organization. You'll note that it looks kind of similar to this, and this is, I think, why we need it. So we often jump immediately to specific solutions, okay? And we need to start all the way up here and start doing really good research, developing insights, trying to understand things like the visitor journey and the user experience, using that to define what the specific problems are, and then engaging with users and people in order to brainstorm, ideate, and prototype. Involving humans, like our customers, throughout this whole journey is really important. We as a sector do it in pockets. There's a lot more co-curation and co-design and things. That's great. We need to do more of that. But it needs to move into this kind of process. It needs to be an organizational-wide thing, not something that we do in individual departments. Adaptable products. Here is a list of adaptable oh, no, there isn't. Right, there isn't a list of adaptable products because you cannot decide what products, what technology you want or you need until you do all of that other stuff. We need parameters. My boss, when I spoke to her about this, said, don't use the word parameters, that's boring. I said, fine, okay. I said, what about constraints? And she said, no, just use parameters. But you need parameters, okay? We need the vision. People, processes, technology need to come together to help you meet your vision. There needs to be some parameters because we get excited about the creative process. Often we don't use parameters. And the way I describe this is, I've never been to an art class. My frame of reference is TV programs and books I've read. But I'm assuming at an art class, you don't just sort of arrive and a guy goes, just paint whatever, right? They don't do that, right? There's like a vase with some flowers in it or a naked guy and you have to paint him, right? The creativity is within the constraints. It's within the parameters. And so you will get, if you've got 12 people in there, you'll get 12 interpretations, 12 very different ideas. That's where the creativity comes to bear. Okay, so again, that might not be what art class is like. Someone needs to tell me. Yes, that strategy might sound a little bit boring. This is Her Majesty's Australian ship, the Australia. Not very original Australians, don't know if you've got any in. So yeah, so this is World War I. Didn't have aircraft carriers, but they needed to launch an aircraft so it could go and scout around and see if there's any enemy nearby. And so they just thought, we'll put these planks of wood on top of this gun and we'll fly it off the end. This is parameters, right? These are constraints. There's a very clear idea of what they want to do, but they've got very little to work with to figure out how to do it. I don't know who the pilot of this aircraft is, but I don't think, if you asked him what emotion are you feeling right now, I don't think he will say bored. Okay, he's not bored. All right. So yes, right, it's a little bit scary. And what I'm suggesting here is that we do things entirely differently and that we maybe scrap a lot of the things that we have talked about in the past. But I honestly think now is the time. And if Kodak and Blockbuster can be disrupted, museums can, even though we feel like we've been here hundreds of years. Okay, we need to be concerned about this kind of thing, and we need to think about how we become adaptable. So there it is. I hope that's interesting. We've got a bit of time left for questions, but thank you very much.